You can probably recite from memory at least one podcast promo code. For me, if I want to purchase a website or a domain, I can go to squarespace.com/savage. That's Dan Savage's Savage Lovecast, which I started listening to in 2015. That's how powerful and long-standing promo codes are. But is it time to rethink promo codes? I've got Bryan Barletta and Tom Webster on the show to discuss.
Sounds Profitable is supported by Podsights. Check out Podsights' latest podcast advertising benchmark report to see how your campaigns compare. Go to podsights.com to learn more.
Special thanks to our partners for making Sounds Profitable possible. Check them out by going to soundsprofitable.com and clicking on their logos in the articles.
Welcome to Sounds Profitable Ad Tech Applied. I'm Arielle Nissenblatt. On the show today, I've got Tom and Bryan, who run the ship at Sounds Profitable. Over the next few weeks, you'll hear the three of us a whole bunch. We're going to be going more in depth on the articles that you may or may not have read in our newsletter. So whether you read the newsletter regularly and want more from us on the contents therein, or you don't read the newsletter and want to take part in the discussion anyways, this is for you. First, let me welcome Tom and Bryan. How are you both?
Good. I'm doing great.
Well, I'm doing great, Arielle. How are you? Things are wonderful here in Boston. Well, I will say that I've been doing a lot of fantasy football podcast listening because my fantasy football team is an abomination. And as someone who purports to be any good at statistics, it's embarrassing. It is embarrassing to be 3-3. So right now I'm listening to 8 to 10 hours of fantasy football podcasts every single day in an attempt to recoup my losses.
Oh my God, that's a lot.
That is a lot.
Well, it's worth it for that $50 prize.
I've been digging into a handful of tabletop RPGs that I've been buying, but specifically board games. Me and my wife dug out a game that me and Tom both bought, Descent: Legends of the Dark. I'm very thankful that me and my wife started playing it again, because as we were playing it yesterday, the shelf mounted behind me over for nobody who's watching, because this is a podcast and not a video yet, fell off the wall. Thankfully, none of the books or anything fell in there because they're so jam-packed, but I may have exceeded the weight limit with the amount of role-playing books and board games there. So thankfully, we were in the room when it happened, emptied it all out, pulled the shelf out. But yeah, I guess I had to stop buying as many or read them first before I put them on the bookshelf.
Well, I do love that the two of you have interests outside of podcasting. That is important.
And we shared. We're actually super excited because we're going to do like a Sounds Profitable holiday party at PAX Unplugged this year. Tom and I are going to go play board games for the whole weekend. And if anybody wants to join, it's in Philadelphia. I would love to have you come play board games with us.
What a great idea. Well, today, Tom and Bryan, I want to talk about an article that you wrote, Tom. It is called, "Is It Time to Rethink Promo Codes?" First, let's discuss the decision to title this article as a question. What went through your brain?
Well, what went through my brain is that it is a question. And I think there's, when people question things, it's either A, to ask an honest question, that they don't know the answer to, or it's B, to call something into question, to doubt it.
Or to lead people, right?
Or to lead people, yeah. And I don't particularly care for the latter. I'm not someone who just calls things into question. But I do like to change my mind when I have new information. And in the second part of After These Messages, which we recently put out, We'll Be Right Back, we published a little bit of data on some of the open-ended responses that the respondents to that study gave us about the messages that they heard in the ad that they were all played. Everybody in that study was played one of 3 treatments of an Athletic Greens ad taken from the Jordan Harbinger show, which we basically constructed 3 different takes of it. And we invited people who recalled an ad to write in, what are the things that you remember about that ad? What are some of the messages? And I did a fair amount of text analysis of all of that, and a whole bunch of things came back. First of all, the brand name was the main message recalled by everybody, which, especially if you're a new brand, that's kind of what you want. It showed that the podcast ads, all 3 executions of them, were extremely successful in being able to do that. But one of the interesting things about that ad and what people recalled is that all 3 ads featured the same offer, and that offer was available to people for by using a promo code. And as you mentioned at the top of the show, promo codes are a deeply ingrained part of podcasting, direct response advertising, performance marketing. That's the bread and butter for podcasts, and using those promo codes is one of the driving factors behind that. But what was kind of interesting about looking at the text responses for the advertising executions that we looked at was that only a literal single handful of people recalled that there was a promo code. And I thought about this looking at that data because we know a couple of things. We know that promo codes are actually incredibly successful. We know that they work. We have all kinds of performance data on that. And the fact that it wasn't top of mind necessarily with the respondents in this study, it's not, it's certainly not, I don't think, casting aspersions on the effectiveness of promo codes, but they weren't top of mind. And we do ask people when they hear podcast ads to think about a lot of information, to consider a lot of new information, often about a brand that's brand new to them. And so is there a more effective way that we can layer this additional piece of information, the promo code, on top of that, which might make them more effective? And that was really the goal behind asking the question the way that the way that I did in the article. It's an open and honest question. Is there a way to make these work better?
And so just talk to me a bit about your relationship with promo codes. I mentioned up at the top of the show that I have been listening to Savage Love from Dan Savage for a really, really long time. So much so that I bought my Squarespace website using that code in 2017. And I still know the code, and it really sticks with me. What sticks in your head about promo codes? Have you ever bought something with a promo code?
It's funny. I have, but I don't think that I'm not sort of standard gen pop on this. I mean, often I will become interested in a product maybe long after I've heard the ad, and I'll do a web search to find out if there's a podcast that I support that is using a promo code, and I will try to use that promo code because A, I want to buy the product, B, I want a discount, and C, I want to support that podcast. For me, it may not happen immediately. It may not happen. I heard the ad today. I go online, I search for it, I use the promo code, and then that's sort of an immediate thing. And that's something that is not necessarily unique to podcasting, but makes podcasting different to other media, is that there's often an incredible lag period between the exposure to an ad and the actual, the payoff from it, whether that's the use of a promo code or simply searching for that product's order page. It doesn't necessarily happen within the boundaries of a neat campaign. It might happen months, maybe a year after a campaign was heard. And so that's another thing in terms of promo codes where I think we know that they're effective, but could they be even more impactful if we could create a stronger linkage there? I think the answer is yes.
I think when that link happens, that it is it's the same scenario that we talk about where Google gets all the credit if you don't know the link. I think that there are tons of times where we know, like you said, you're always going to use that landing page for Squarespace. Whenever you do anything with Squarespace, you could be years past listening to that podcast. You could remember that you need to buy a website or build a website, and you go to do it and you're like, oh, I'll just check out this promo code, and you'll go again and you'll do it again. It's branding. Right? Like if that link is there and that podcast means something to you, then you remember it. And when that purchase comes back up, whenever it does, you see a billboard, you see their Super Bowl commercial, you see something else, you're going to make that link again with that content, and you might try it out.
I was just going to ask you. Yeah.
You asked also for examples. And this is a funny one. I went to buy SimpliSafe. We moved into a new house. We wanted to set up SimpliSafe. My wife loves all the Crooked Media shows. She went to the website to go use their promo code. Promo code was worse than what was on the website. It was a worse deal.
For those who can't see, my mouth is agape. I am.
Well, that's the scary part about that stuff, right? Like, and this is like, my days started in podcasting as a pixel attribution guy. And I'll tell you all day long, I used to say, promo codes, there's so many holes in it. The promo could be worse than what's on the website or whatever the deal is. And that's true. And also, people with promo codes are just blasting them everywhere to deal sites so that everybody just uses that promo. And that's also true. But the truth is they still work great when they work, when that link is there, when it does happen, whether it's the site like Tom's suggesting, or such a Savage, right? I'm never going to forget Savage. I don't even listen to that podcast, but now I know, I'll just try in writing Savage.
Yeah,
there.
You never know.
But
He's been advertising for a long time.
Yeah, that's the flaw that happened there. I went to buy it, and it was a better deal to just take the deal on their site.
Wow. Well, Tom, how do you propose, or better yet, how does Tamsin propose to you that we make promo codes better? Shout out to Tamsin Webster.
Shout out to Tamsin Webster, the smarter of the two Websters. I was talking with her about this issue, about how I thought that promo codes were kind of punching below their weight, right? That obviously that these ads are very, very effective. But I still think, and we know this, and this is kind of discounted in a way. We know that not everybody is going to use them, even if it was in fact a podcast ad that drove them to potentially purchase the product. But my wife, Tamsin, who's really smart about messaging and kind of sharply focused branding, made a very good point here, which is that when you hear an ad on a podcast, you're getting a whole bunch of new information, right? You're getting here's a brand that maybe you're not aware of. It's solving a problem that maybe you do or don't have. It has these features and benefits. It's cramming a lot of information into you in 30 seconds or 60 seconds. One piece of which is, and here's a promo code. And in all of these ads, this new information, it's new and different every time. It's, squarespace.com/this promo code, or, ziprecruiter.com/that promo code, and so on. There's all this new information. And so what her suggestion was, and of course it made a lot of sense to me, was why don't we just drive people to the same place always, so that becomes a known piece of information, right? The brand and the messaging in the ad are going to be new to people. But if they're always expecting, all right, you're going to go to, BillSimmons.com, or you're going to go to SavageLove.com, you're going to go to that one site all the time, so you don't have to remember all of these codes, and the offers are all there. Then that's one less piece of new information, and it might encourage people to use the codes more. And of course, the benefits of the advertiser is that they have a better sense in their marketing mix about what's performing better. And that's not just pitting one podcast against another, but it's in total, are podcasts doing better than radio? Are podcasts doing better than print or some of the other channels that people are using? And more widespread use of promo codes can do that. So the idea here really, and a lot of podcasts do have a single page where they list their offers and sponsors, but it's not what they drive people to in the audio. And maybe if people can get acclimated to just a standard, go to jordanharbinger.com for this offer, that's just one less piece of new information that people have to juggle.
So let's run through a scenario where, let's say somebody's listening to this and they're like, you know what? Tamsin is super smart. And it's cool that she shared her idea with Tom, and that Tom then shared it with us. How do I go about implementing this if I'm a publisher?
Well, I think one thing you can do as a publisher that requires, I think, minimal hoops to jump through is to have a page with all of your current offers on it, right? I mean, that's that you may get some pushback from some brands on that, but you shouldn't, right? It's one more place where that brand is being advertised. They're already showing up in your podcast, so presumably they don't mind being associated with you. So I think table stakes here is having a single offers page, and hopefully you do in fact have a vibrant website that is just for your podcast. Having a single offers page that you can send people to, that I think is table stakes. The part where I think you are going to have discussions with brands is sending your listeners to that instead of to the brand's website. And the pushback that you're going to get is, why would I want to give you the relationship? And I think, to be honest, that's kind of bullshit. Because ultimately, the listener is going to buy the product from the brand. Especially promo codes are often DTC products, right? They're things that you're ordering directly from the brand anyway. The brand is going to take your email address, they're going to take your phone number, and every subsequent interaction that you're going to have around that product is going to be with the brand and not with the podcast. There's no relationship there. That's an overstatement. There's simply a handoff. And instead of that handoff being, well, let's see if I remember the code. I don't. Let me Google the brand. Oh, there it is. And Google gets the attribution. What you're asking the advertiser to do is, you know what? Let me take just the very front end of this. The relationship will be yours going forward. And in doing so, you're going to know exactly how well this marketing worked for you. instead of us having to say, well, I bet it's even better if everybody used the promo code, right? There's no reason for that. So, does it involve a discussion? It does. Ultimately, the product of that discussion benefits both the podcaster and the brand.
Right. So we're betting here on the fact that retention will be better if you are asking your listeners to remember one thing instead of several.
Yeah, exactly. Because if the listener can be trained very early on to only go to this page for offers, then they don't have to think about it again. That just becomes a default behavior for them. And that promo code, whether there's an actual promo code exchanged or not, it might just be a short link or something like that. That's going to become the default behavior. And that's going to increase the attribution, the correct attribution of that purchase to the podcast that drove it. And yes, to the podcast that drove it, but also to podcasting in general. And this is something, because we have that linkage that podcasting can do, that's a competitive advantage over things like radio.
And I mean, think about for the episode details, right? You can put that link in every episode, whether they're dynamically inserted ads or they're baked in, or even programmatic. If you're working with a partner and your promo code's there, or you can put out the offers there, you can see all the advertisers that you're working with, whether direct or through other relationships. You can build that page and make it dynamic and have it there. Being able to say to someone like, hey, check this out for this new Helix mattress we're doing. And by the way, while you're there, have you thought about re-upping your Athletic Greens subscription? Like, the upsell's there. Right. The ability to drive people there and create that combo, I think it's killer. And we don't have a way to put a banner in a podcast. We don't have a way to drive a click other than the episode description. And so having one set link there that's always there, having that page dynamically grow and add and list everybody you've ever worked with, that's great. I think that's a great way to pull them into buying from your store, right? Buying your merch effectively, buying your version of whatever that product is.
And even so, it's not technically your store. It's just a place where you are essentially, it's a gallery of the brands that you work with. So my next question is this strategy, and you touched on this a bit, but I think there's more to it. Is this strategy equally appealing for both advertisers and publishers? And I think it's definitely appealing for publishers, but what make it very explicit. What is appealing for advertisers about this?
To understand, there's that cliched John Wanamaker quote by, I know 50% of my advertising works. I just don't know which half. Right.
It's a great quote.
This is a path to surety. This is a path to certainty, because Google gets credited way too much for products and services that are purchased online. When you don't remember something and you Google it, last touch attribution gives it to Google. And that's just all kinds of wrong for podcasting. And anything that we can do to remove those barriers is obviously going to be good for the podcaster. But it's also, I think, it's something that you can pitch to the advertiser as a way to get more certainty and more surety about what exactly is working. Because we can tell stories all day long to advertisers that say, well, we know the podcast ad is working really well, even if the promo code isn't used as much as we think it should be. We don't need to say that. If we can find a way for a podcast to put success in its way by only training listeners to have one learned behavior in the audio, which is go to mypodcast.com/offers and you'll find it all there. And we do that in the audio, then that's something that the listener no longer has to think about. And it becomes a default behavior for them to support the show. It's not an additional thing that we have to train them to do.
And here's something that might make it more enticing for advertisers is you can, instead of it being bryanbarletta.com/offers, it could be bryanbarletta.com/eighth layer mattress, right? And then you can have all of those URLs redirect to /offers so that you are still sharing that promo code. They are still getting that brand recognition in your podcast when you're doing an ad read for that.
Yeah. You could even have your 404 page go to your offers page in case somebody misspells the brand. Why not?
How exciting.
It's not a bad idea. That's actually a really smart one. But you said that the trained habit is really smart. Like, we're still saying wherever you get your podcasts. And Tom, you have a great line about that. Like, do you really mean that? Do you really want to say wherever you get your podcasts? Are you really everywhere? We have so many limited paths. We moved from subscription to followers, and that was a headache on the terminology. If the mindset, the default is go to soundsprofitable.com/offers, we've done two major things. We've said it is a requirement to have a website, which it should be. We need to get past that. Every podcast needs to have a website. It's part of your brand. Give them something to chew on. Give them something to go to. And 2, it says this is where the ads can be interacted with. I think it's a smart behavior because it doesn't disperse that intention. I'm excited. I'm listening. I forgot what the specific offer was, but there are a few things you mentioned. And oh, cool. I missed this ad, but that's perfect too. You recommend it? Great. You're all right there.
So, Tom, where can folks go to learn more about the studies that we referenced in this discussion, where you got this idea from?
Yeah, so you just need to go to soundsprofitable.com, click on research, and we have 3 studies up now, the creators, after these messages, and We'll Be Right Back. What we're talking about now was taken specifically from We'll Be Right Back, which is really part 2 of After These Messages, which is a great study that Sounds Profitable put out over the past couple of months on the effectiveness of various creative executions of podcast advertising. And it's, the promo code insight is one of many insights that came out of these siblings, these research siblings that we put out.
Thank you, Tom and Bryan, for joining me on this week's episode of Sounds Profitable Ad Tech Applied to discuss, is it time to rethink promo codes? ?
Well, thanks. And if you want to buy Sounds Profitable, just go to soundsprofitable.com. Use the promo code Sounds Profitable, and you'll get 5% off the purchase of Sounds Profitable.
This isn't shameless acquisition.
We need to work that one out.
Oh, no. Yeah, that's what it should be. Go to shamelessacquisitiontarget.biz and use the promo code Sounds Profitable.
Shameless.biz.
100%.
Shameless.biz.
Hey listeners, what do you think of the show? We would love to hear from you. Please reach out if you have any questions or comments. We're on Twitter. Here are our handles: @SoundsProfNews, @Bryan Barletta, @Webby2001, and @AriThisAndThat. And if you want to send us an email, we would love that. That's podcast@soundsprofitable.com. This episode of Sounds Profitable was written by me, Arielle Nissenblatt. It's edited by Reece, Carman, and Ron Tendick. It's built using Spooler, and it's hosted on Omny Studios.
This show is recorded with SquadCast, the best place to record studio quality video and audio for content creators. I use SquadCast for every interview and product deep dive, and I encourage you to check it out. Please go to squadcast.fm for a free 7-day trial and let me know what you think.
Do you want more Sounds Profitable? And let's face it, who doesn't? Make sure you're subscribed to both of our podcast feeds and to our newsletter. You can get more information about all of that at soundsprofitable.com.
And thanks to you for listening to this episode of Sounds Profitable Ad Tech Applied with me, Bryan Barletta.
Me, Arielle Nissenblatt.
And me, Tom Webster. We'll see you next time.